么很有缘的Omega，能别说的这么恶心吗？
怎么，我说错了？
画面说，是有个 Omega 突然发热，沈总那是无心之事。
哦，无心之事啊。
Life has a cruel way of twisting fate, and for Gao Tu, destiny carved a path he never expected. After running from Shen Wenlang, heartbroken and convinced that separation was the only way to survive, Gao Tu believed he could finally find freedom. He thought distance would heal the wounds that betrayal had left behind. But far away from Wenlang, in a quiet town with no familiar faces, Gao Tu soon found himself trapped in a reality more complex than any heartbreak. He was carrying Shen Wenlang's child. At first, disbelief consumed him. He ignored the nausea, brushed aside the exhaustion, and told himself it was just stress from all the running. His body felt heavier, slower, but he blamed it on poor sleep and bad meals. Yet, as days passed, he could no longer deny the truth. His body was changing, reshaping itself to nurture another life. Panic gripped him as the realization sank in. He was pregnant with Wenlang's child. The man he thought he had left behind, the man whose love he once cherished, but whose betrayal still scarred him, was now bound to him in the most irreversible way possible. No matter how far he ran, he could never escape Shen Wenlang. Their connection lived inside him, in every heartbeat of the child growing in his womb. The weight of this knowledge broke him. Alone in his small rented room, Gao Tu would curl into himself, trembling as he pressed a hand over his stomach. Tears fell freely, staining the thin blanket beneath him. He wanted to hate Wenlang, wanted to curse fate for chaining him to a man who had hurt him so deeply. But every time he felt the flutter of life inside him, his anger wavered. This child was innocent, a fragment of both love and pain. And Gao Tu couldn't bring himself to see it as anything but precious. Still, the fear remained. How could he raise this child alone? How could he face the whispers, the judgment, the crushing loneliness? And worse, what if Shen Wenlang found out? Would Wenlang demand the child? Would he even care? Gao Tu's heart ached with these questions, each one heavier than the last. Meanwhile, Shen Wenlang lived with his own torment. To him, Gao Tu had vanished like smoke, abandoning him when loyalty mattered most. He saw Gao Tu's disappearance as betrayal, a cruel act that left him vulnerable and alone. Though he told himself he no longer cared, every sleepless night betrayed him. He missed Gao Tu's laughter, his stubbornness, the way his presence steadied Wenlang even in the darkest storms. And yet, he believed that Gao Tu had chosen distance over love. The bitterness in his heart grew like wildfire. As Gao Tu struggled with the changes in his body, nature itself unleashed chaos. An earthquake ripped through the region, its tremors shaking the very ground beneath his feet. Walls cracked, buildings crumbled, and the air filled with dust and screams. Gao Tu, weak and carrying a fragile life, found himself in the heart of disaster. Clutching his stomach, he fought to stay upright, whispering silent prayers to a god he wasn't sure was listening. Every second felt like eternity. The earth beneath him split, and the cries of people blended with the thunder of destruction. Gao Tu stumbled through the chaos, desperate to protect not just himself but the child growing inside. In those terrifying moments, he realized just how vulnerable he had become. His body was no longer his own, it was the vessel of another life. The fear of losing that life tore at him more than the collapsing walls ever could. In the aftermath, Gao Tu sat among ruins, his body aching, his mind fractured. Yet, as he placed a trembling hand on his stomach, relief washed over him. The child was still there, still alive. The earthquake, though devastating, had not stolen this last connection he had to Wenlang. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered to the unborn life, "I will protect you, no matter what it takes." The earthquake mirrored the storm in his heart. Just as the land had split apart, so too had his relationship with Wenlang. Betrayal and pain had fractured their bond, leaving cracks too deep to repair. But just as survivors rose from the rubble, Gao Tu began to rebuild himself. He was no longer just a lover scorned. He was a parent preparing for the greatest fight of his life. As the months passed, the pregnancy wore heavily on him. His body weakened, every step slower than the last. Simple tasks became exhausting, yet he endured. He began to find strength in the small things. The first kick of the baby, the gentle roll that reminded him he was never truly alone. With each movement inside him, he discovered a new reason to fight. At night, however, doubts haunted him. Was this child a curse binding him forever to a man who had shattered his heart? Or was it a blessing, a chance for something new? Something pure to emerge from the ruins of betrayal? Sometimes, when he closed his eyes, Gao Tu remembered the tenderness Wenlang once showed him, the way he held him as though the world outside didn't exist. In those memories, he almost believed in hope. But then, the sting of betrayal would return, reminding him why he ran. Wenlang, far away, felt the same pull of memory. He buried himself in responsibilities, convincing himself he no longer needed Gao Tu. But at night, in silence, he would feel an emptiness that refused to fade. He did not know why he still longed for the one who left him, but deep inside, he felt a tether he couldn't explain. Fate, it seemed, was whispering to him even from a distance. The unborn child became a symbol of love, of pain, of destiny. For Gao Tu, it was both a reminder of betrayal and a reason to keep living. For Wenlang, once he discovered the truth, it would become a reckoning, a moment where love and anger would collide. And so, as Gao Tu's body grew heavier, his spirit transformed. He was no longer just a man fleeing betrayal. He was a parent, carrying hope in its purest form. His tears turned into determination, his fear into resolve. The earthquake, the loneliness, the bitterness, all became stepping stones toward a new chapter. This was not the end of Gao Tu and Shen Wenlang's story. Fate was not finished with them. Their paths would collide again, not just as two lovers torn apart, but as parents bound by the life they had created. The child would become the bridge between them, a chance for redemption, or perhaps a battlefield for unresolved pain. But for now, as Gao Tu sat under the quiet night sky, hand resting on his stomach, he whispered a promise. "You will know love. Even if I must give everything, you will never feel the loneliness I carry." In those words lay the truth of his transformation. Gao Tu was no longer just a man wounded by betrayal. He was becoming something greater. A protector, a parent, a survivor of both heartbreak and disaster. And somewhere, far away, Shen Wenlang stirred in the quiet of his room, feeling a pull in his heart he could not name. Their story was not over. It had only just begun.